Welcome to Breakaway USA. In today's podcast, we are going to be talking about three especially important things, so make sure you stick around. Number one is going to be the Republican debates that just happened last night. Gentry's going to tell us who won, who lost, and what exactly was said and why it's important. And then Michael's going to focus on the 17th Amendment. Now, the 17th Amendment is incredibly important for a few specific reasons, so he's going to explain why and how. And then also, something happened yesterday where the Canadian Parliament introduced a Nazi collaborator. So I'm curious to hear exactly what happened and why that happened.
So we could start actually with the Canadian Parliament essentially having a standing ovation for this Ukrainian veteran who actually fought in World War II with the Nazis.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
Trudeau comes out and says that this is very embarrassing for Canada and for all Canadians.
Goes without saying that it is profoundly embarrassing for Canada's Parliament and by extension for all Canadians.
That's an interesting way of going about it, as opposed to saying, well, you know, this is our doing and our mistake. He's like, he puts all Canadians, he implicates all Canadians. Like, I'm not embarrassed by this.
So wait, hold on. Well, give me some context. So the Parliament.
Okay, so hold on. So they had Zelensky come to the Canadian Parliament after he went to the U.S. Parliament to ask for more money, to ask for whatever the heck he needs, right?
Okay.
More siphoning off of Canadian and U.S. tax dollars. So Zelensky comes, and then the Speaker of the House recognizes a Canadian Ukrainian who unwittingly they didn't realize, I guess, that he was a Nazi collaborator in World War II. He's 93, 97 years old. But so it's just the irony comes full circle here, because one of the main criticisms that Putin has, and they criticize Putin for having this criticism of Ukraine, is that there's a ton of neo-Nazis in the west of Ukraine. So if people are familiar with the Ukrainian geography and demography, the west of Ukraine, Kiev, which is centered around Kiev. So you have the west of Ukraine, then you have the east of Ukraine, which is the Donbass region, where you have Luhansk and Donetsk, and the east of Ukraine is, you know, they're bordering Russia, and they're majority Russian speaking. So you have this since 2014, since this coup in 2014, you've had an ongoing kind of civil war between the east and the west. And the east, this Donetsk region, the Donbass region, sorry, they voted to become independent of Ukraine, to be an independent state. There was a US-backed coup. This is not conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy that.
Yeah, there's actually documentary videos of them talking about the people in power at the moment saying that this has to happen. So
yeah, Oliver Stone made a great documentary. I've posted before, and it's gotten censored, of course. But Victoria Nuland and Gregory something or other, the ambassador to Ukraine, they essentially used the USAID and planned a coup with a couple key players there. One of them being Klitschko, the boxer, and then there was Ole Tokhnibuk and this guy Yatsenyuk, and they essentially took over the government after this coup.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Klitsch and Tokhnibuk on the outside. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
The USAID and George Soros' Open Society Foundation, through their foundation, the International Renaissance Foundation in Ukraine, were behind this violent uprising and overthrow of a government.
I set up a foundation in Ukraine before Ukraine became independent of Russia. And the foundation has been functioning ever since. And it played an important part in events now.
But so essentially there's been this war between the East and the West, and the West of Ukraine has a long history of being Nazi sympathizers with this guy, Stepan Bandera, who started the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists.
And the thing is that people have to make sure that they're not surprised that when we say, oh, the U.S. was involved in this coup. Like, there isn't really one coup anywhere in the world that the U.S. isn't a part of, or that the U.S. orchestrated. I mean, the CIA is something else. So, yeah, it's not like this is a one-off situation. Like, oh, it's so random.
But people that would be listening to us, I believe they are very familiar with this Ukrainian narrative, this fake Ukrainian narrative in the mainstream, and what's really happened. So just to top this off, so they invited Zelensky to Parliament to ask for more money and whatnot. But they honored this guy. They had a standing ovation. The Speaker of the House then resigned the next day because he was embarrassed by this, which is what politicians should do. If Trudeau had any dignity, he would have resigned a long time ago with all of his corruption allegations.
Do you think it was a vetting mistake? Because that's happened even here in the State of the Union.
It was
with the police officer, I believe that
But the irony is that this is not a one-off thing. Like the majority of Western Ukraine, the people that we're funding are neo-Nazis. This is not like this is well documented. So that's the point of it. That's, for me, that is like, it's just so telling of what's actually happening, how fake the narrative is in the mainstream media.
From this point, I do try to think down the middle. So yes, I mean, Azov, especially the Azov regiment, was infiltrated by neo-Nazis. They have flags, and there's tons of pictures of them doing the Nazi signal, symbolism, all that. But then I've read that they've cleaned it up, that they've gotten rid of the people at the top. Now, whether that's true, who knows, right? There's no way really to tell. But I want to believe that they're inherently good. So if let's say it was the early 1900s,
we have a long discussion to have about
because the people of the country are fundamentally good people, right? I mean, just like we were saying, people at the top, the elites that want to control everything, but the people are, for the most part, good. Yeah, of course, you're always going to have the fringe, right and left that are going to be kind of the outliers, but it's an interesting story. There's a lot to it, and I don't know if rather who's right, who's wrong, who's lying, and I mean, obviously both sides are lying, but I want to believe, from knowing so many Ukrainian people that I've come across here in Hollywood and friends that I have, that some of them are like, yeah, I just don't care, man. I just don't want war. Like,
exactly.
I just wanted to stop, but it doesn't behoove both sides to have it stop. That's sad.
So going back to the Nazi being honored at this Canadian event in Parliament, it could have been a vetting issue, to be honest. They wouldn't have done anything unless people on Twitter, on X, pushed back, right? There was a whole huge movement where they were like, people heard about it and they're like, well, wait, I know a little bit about war history. Like, people in Ukraine, especially where this guy was from, they were Nazis. And then it turns out that this guy was actually in the SS. To be honest, I mean, Trudeau's track record isn't that great, and the Canadian government's track record isn't that great. So, like, my thought process is, okay. My take is that the Liberal Party in Canada doesn't have a great track record. I think they were trying to pull a fast one on us and just honor this SS Nazi and just try to almost appropriate that movement and try to make it look good. And then obviously X and Twitter push back, and I mean, people on X made the speaker step down, right? I mean, that's essentially what happened. So, I mean, that's my take, though.
Is this the same speaker, Michael? You would know. Is this the same speaker that introduced, or rather, that cut the guy off when he called and he was asking who the young leaders of the WEF are inside the parliament? Okay.
I think it was another one.
I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's try again. The honorable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member was promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call out disinformation.
We'll get into debate again.
Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader.
The problem with Canadian Parliament is the Speaker of the House is somebody who's supposed to be enforcing the regulations and the kind of decorum, or if you will, of the Parliament. But one of their jobs is to enforce the answering of questions, right? So what happens in Parliament, it's a similar structure to, I mean, it literally copy pasted from the UK, where that you basically have a live debate going on. It's back and forth, right? And the Speaker kind of goes, this, Conservative Party has a say, Liberal Party has a say, NDP has somebody to say, But so if the Conservative Party asks a question, the Conservative Party, which is the minority, they ask a question to the majority government, which is the Liberal government, they need to answer the freaking question, right? But the Speaker, it's their job to enforce that. If they ask about something, if Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the opposition, the Conservative Party, asks something to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals about taxes, about the funding of Ukraine, about whatever it is, healthcare, they need to answer the question. They can't just not answer the question and go on their platitude rant of the same thing over and over again.
And it's not only Canadian Parliament. I mean, you look at any Senate hearing or any
for sure
Judiciary Committee hearing, or even when they're Supreme Court hearings, it's all the same. No one answers the question because they just want your time to run out, and then you're done. So you can keep asking the same question and get no answer and have no ability to answer any other questions. Or what do you do if you're trying to get an answer out of someone and they're still repeating it, and that the chairman says you have 3 minutes left?
Yeah,
that's a rough situation to be in. And I think that maybe it's a fundamental problem with the way that we have our hearings.
But so that's the point, is somebody needs to be actually mediating it and saying, well, we can't go further until you answer this question technically. Like, if I ask you a numbers question, like, what is the actual, increase of this tax burden on this part of, you can't just say, we're doing our best to fight for Canadians, and, it's like, answer the question.
I have a good one for you. When they asked the Supreme Court nominee, what is a woman? She says, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. Literally said, I'm not a biologist. So that shows you how cultist it is, where they can't even give an answer. They have to refer you to an expert, right? If you're a woman and you don't know what a woman is, and you want to be on the Supreme Court, then you have to make the hardest decisions in the world, and you cannot answer what is a woman as a woman. Come on, you got to be kidding me.
It's a farce. It's all a big farce.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide. Well, so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
In their defense, I guess, they would have a mob coming after them, right? As a liberal judge,
I probably would too.
It's a cult.
You can't say it because you have to refer to.
If you go against the mainstream narrative of that cult, you get excommunicated.
That's exactly what it is. It's just like Scientology or any other cult, right? You come out and you don't say what the heads want you to say. I mean, think about having to refer something to a biologist. That's the world we're living in right now.
How big do you think the mainstream is? Because I think that there's like this connotation that the mainstream is the majority. I don't think that's the case anymore. How big do you think the mainstream is right now?
Very small. I think this silent majority thing is even bigger than we think. It's just, the 2020 election gave people the impression that we were in the minority, but we know the reality of the 2020 election.
This is something that I think the mainstream media is dealing with. People like George Soros and whoever owns Jeff Bezos and all these people, all these five companies that own basically all the mainstream media, is they're dealing with how do you make up for dwindling numbers, loss of trust, but how do you still keep your power? So I've heard that George Soros is now paying influencers to spread news. That's one way to do it. It's probably cheaper than, having a massive production of like CNN on, 24/7. So it looks like that fight of, yes, the mainstream media is dying, but now they're just infiltrating alt media and social media influencers to spew the same lines. And at that point, it's going to be interesting. Like, how do you fight that?
So who's the conservative version of George Soros? Like, who's out there that's like a hedge fund manager that's ultra conservative that could do that same thing? And this is, I guess, like a call to like whoever, like, be the conservative George Soros. Like, if you got billions of dollars and you love America, like, spend some of it. The playbook is there. The playbook isn't evil, by the way. It's just that the left has done a lot better job at using it, and so it seems like it's evil, right? But like, pay us, like, pay influencers, pay people who have audiences to get the news out.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
So, as a staple of the podcast, we're gonna introduce a Constitution segment, and today we're gonna go over the 17th Amendment. I have my little portable Constitution here, which I think everybody should have.
It's Constitution time.
It's great. It's Constitution time. So the reason why we want to talk about the 17th Amendment is because the implications that it has are huge for the foundation of our country and how we are governed, because we're a constitutional republic. What this did is that it changed the Senate from being appointed by the state legislatures to being popularly elected, the same way that the House of Representatives is popularly elected. So the first line in the 17th Amendment is, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. So the important line here is elected by the people thereof. This was instantiated in 1913, and the important part of it is that the Senate was supposed to be the representative of each state. Each state was supposed to have 2 representatives, and it was supposed to represent the interest of each state. Now that it's popularly elected, they have to raise funds and they have to campaign, and now essentially they're in the back pocket of special interests.
So you cannot be just a politician. You have to be a bought and paid for politician if you want to keep being a politician.
Exactly.
So essentially what it did is it changed us from a democratic republic to more of a democracy, if I'm hearing that right.
Exactly.
And I know that the founders had initially wanted to be the Senate, the one that moves slow, that doesn't really, move quickly compared to the House, because you have the differentiation between the two.
It's the checks and balances on the House, essentially, because the House is direct democracy, right? The House is, you have a certain amount of representatives in the House per state based on the population. So California has how many people in the House? You guys know?
Oh, I don't even know. Something like
by district,
30,
right?
30, maybe like 42.
That's a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, 52.
52.
That's wild. 40 Democrats, 12
Jeez.
Republicans.
This amendment was passed in 1913, right? Right before World War I.
At the same time as the Federal Reserve as well.
It seems like there's a lot of shady stuff going on, a lot of globalism, and then going into a war to try to like take people's mind off of the fact that they were trying to consolidate power.
Well, yeah, I mean, you always want to pass a law when people aren't paying attention, and that's one of the most egregious things that is done over and over again by people in both parties. They're like, oh, all right, sneak that in right before. I mean, we know about what happened right before 9/11 with the missing money and the Pentagon and all this stuff, and even right before the war in Ukraine, some shady things happened. There's always seems to be something. Oh, and right before the Hawaii fires, or whatever it was. There was a lot of things that were sneakily passed, and it just seems to be a playbook that everyone follows, and it's very bad for the people.
We should definitely go. We should definitely have a Hawaii talk. Side note.
Well, and the sad thing is that it's still actively happening now. I mean, James O'Keefe, he's down there right now, and he got told, he got told to get the F out or something bad's going to happen to him by somebody who works for the government, and he filmed it on his hidden cameras.
James O'Keefe here on Lahaina Bypass in Maui. We just spoke to this officer on the corner of Lahaina Bypass and Kaiheleku Street, and he told us about the governor's emergency proclamation, suspending First Amendment rights here in Maui, saying that you cannot photograph past Kaiheleku Street or you will be arrested. With the governor's emergency, like what is the rule? No photos of the ocean or whatnot.
Yeah, they don't want nobody stopping on the side and taking photos.
Got it. Does the website show us that rule or that law, or
I don't believe it does.
He said from this road all the way that way, he goes, it's all military National Guard checkpoints.
There's a checkpoint, National Guard checkpoint. Oh.
Okay.
You can try and check in over there and see if they'll allow you guys in there.
All right, so you're looking at Lahaina right there, downtown Lahaina. This is the zone where we're not allowed to photograph. The police officer telling me that I'm not supposed to be doing this. I could be arrested for doing this right now. I'm not supposed to be filming, but we are filming because we have a First Amendment right to film.
Yeah, no, it's very shady what's happening there. And the problem with that, the implications of that actually being something that was orchestrated and covered up by the US government is insane. It's a genocide, essentially. That's a genocide perpetrated on our own people. For what purpose? For allegedly a 15-minute city to transition Lahaina into a 15-minute city. The implications of it are like scary, and nobody's talking about it, or like nobody in the mainstream is talking about it, right? Oh, it was just a wildfire. Really? That was a wildfire. Come on.
The recent fires in California, Australia, and now Hawaii are unlike anything we've ever seen before. They are being called forest fires and wildfires, but they are clearly something very different. These fires are burning homes into a white powdery ash footprint, while often leaving the surrounding green trees and shrubs practically untouched. In extreme cases, forest fires can reach temperatures up to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and the melting point of aluminum is 1,220 degrees Fahrenheit. So it is possible for an extreme forest fire to melt aluminum. But there are cars with puddles of melted aluminum that were clearly not in the wildfire area. And melted glass, which has a melting point around 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. These are unexplained anomalies. In the California fires of 2018, cars were randomly bursting into flames on the freeway with no surrounding fires.
They literally have so many.
I like Gentry's face on this.
I mean, I don't want to go too deep into conspiracy, but I'll just say this. In 2015, I think Lockheed Martin put out an ad about direct energy weapons.
Sound like the stuff of science fiction, right? Sound completely unbelievable. How could our military possibly be using those in future warfare? Guess what? We've just had a recent breakthrough, more great test results that are making lasers a reality. So it's called Athena. Lockheed Martin makes it, and they've been doing a lot of the pioneering in this laser field. Now, what's really exciting about it is that it's so hard to harness that much power and make it compact enough that's actually going to make practical sense downrange. And they've proven that they can do that.
And I posted that a little bit after the Hawaii fires, and just without context. Because again, I don't want to like dive too deep into conspiracy theory like the military industrial complex is actually attacking US cities to create this utopian of a 15-minute city, but also haven't necessarily seen a lot of evidence to go against that.
Right. Are any of you participating in an event, in a restructuring as a stakeholder on Maui at any level, whether you're state, federal, private, or a private citizen? Are you engaged? Are you a stakeholder? Are you written? Is your name listed as a stakeholder of any of the redevelopment plans regarding a smart city? By a raise of hands, I would like to see a raise of hands. I can tell you, Department of Planning, DLNR, DBED, Housing, all of these agencies, and I'm not saying to you directly, but you're here representing these agencies, therefore, it is your responsibility to tell the truth. Each one of these agencies have signed on as stakeholders for the redevelopment of a smart city in Maui. I'm asking you again, who has signed on?
So I'm sorry, but I asked for testimony pursuant to the agenda, and there's nothing on the agenda about smart cities. And if we could also refrain from yelling.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll provide clarification. Smart cities is everything about housing. The idea that you're going to sit around this table, and I realize it's not on today's agenda, but the idea that you're going to sit around this table and make decisions about the long-term viability of sustained life on Maui without the people's input, I can tell you, is this a charade?
There's a lot of blue that didn't get burned up in the fire.
Like trees.
And yeah.
Trees right in the middle that just did it.
Super random. And there's a video going around and it's like a really high powered laser and it goes over all this different kind of fabric, but when you hit the blue color, it doesn't burn up.
We have seen that among the ashy ruins, there are blue-colored objects that have somehow survived the devastation. Blue cars, blue umbrellas, a blue boat, blue planters. Videos online are going viral that show how lasers can easily burn through certain colored objects, but objects that are colored blue remain unharmed. Directed energy weapons include lasers, millimeter wave, and microwave. They are all based on light frequencies, and different wavelengths of light affect colors differently. For example, in laser tattoo removal, different wavelengths are used for removing different colors. And this is because color is a quality of light. Each color has its own frequency.
Right.
So, I mean, here's my take.
All kinds of weird things.
I am open to being wrong about this, but a lot of evidence is pointing towards that. A lot of those things are getting fact checks. A lot of the Hawaii stuff, like you shouldn't post because your account's going to get taken down. And so whenever stuff is fact checked, I'm like, probably true.
Well, yeah, and that's
right
the
on
incredible
target.
part. And thank God for Twitter, or X, whatever, because all this stuff is coming out. You're right. All these videos of Hawaii were taken down. People had no internet access there. Apparently, I was reading that there was like one really big internet tower that just somehow went down. No one had any way to post. People were not let back in their homes. They were calling it some kind of governmental designation where you can't get back in.
They literally can't even get back to their homes that were burnt down. They won't let them back.
I mean, this is like a movie. The sheriff was the same sheriff from the Las Vegas shooting, who was also the coroner, and I guess it slipped out of his own mouth. Then they found out that he has that shortly before that, they got a new way to cremate the bodies where it doesn't leave any DNA whatsoever. So if you're a relative and you're trying to claim the property of your relative, they can't determine whether they're dead or just missing. So that complicates you getting the property. And if I mean, it's just, it goes on and on and on. And I'm seeing this and I'm like, this can't be real. And when you verify the fact that, yeah, sure, like this guy is the same guy that was the sheriff in the Las Vegas shooting, and he's also the coroner, and they have, it's just too much, right? Like at some point you got to say there's too many things pointing in the same direction with the censorship and all this shady stuff happening, and they can't get back in their homes, and there's a new way to transfer property rights. And yeah.
And the response to it, you have reactions of people on the ground. A lot of people that are residents there taking videos themselves and giving their firsthand account. And there's these hearings and whatnot, and you see what they're saying. They're like, the police literally had us blockaded. We could not leave. We were like what? The fire. They have one of the most sophisticated fire warning systems in the world, and it just didn't go off. And it happened in like a split second. Very, very, very weird things. And we're not saying anything. No, it was, guys. So for YouTube, this was a forest fire. It was a forest fire We acknowledge
because of global warming or
global warming, 100%,
global
carbon
heating, or
dioxide,
whatever they call it now.
This is for educational purposes only.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
just
because the
curiosity.
cows farted too much methane, and then Hawaii caught on fire, or whatever George Soros says is the reason. That's YouTube. That's the reason there. But I'll tell you one thing that I've been thinking about is the fact that Hawaii is a heavily Democratic state. I mean, they vote overwhelmingly Democrat. I'm curious to see what the voting is going to be like in this coming election, because that may be some kind of serendipitous moment where, they messed up.
Well, that governor is like literally right beforehand was he at the WEF or the UN talking about how we want to be the leaders in the transition towards this plan or whatnot. Like that governor looks like an absolute tool. But yeah, the whole thing is we can have a long discussion about this. Maybe we will, and just put it on Rumble where we can be uncensored.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of states that are probably going to go red that were outliers in 2020. I mean,
if the elections are legitimate, yeah.
Right. I think Hawaii, probably, they've just been like demolished by these democratic policies. New York, even, they're getting overrun by, I mean, they're a border state now, right? They're getting overrun by these illegal immigrants that are getting trucked in.
You even have Eric Adams saying that.
Pennsylvania.
It's dying.
Pennsylvania is interesting because what they're doing is, or what they're trying to do is issue IDs to people who aren't even citizens.
Yeah.
I saw that on Twitter the other day, and essentially, I mean, my first thought was they're going to try to steal the vote. Chicago is being overrun by illegal immigrants. Now,
Philadelphia's in riots.
Philadelphia's in riots.
They're all prepping.
I mean,
it's all prepping now.
Yeah.
They're setting the stage for the election.
Everything, you're right. Everything gets riled up before elections. BLM was right before elections. Then you had COVID.
Now, it sadly, and Tucker, intimated this, but a wartime president is very hard to unseat. I mean, just historically, right?
Yeah.
So, what is Biden's, I guess, nuclear option? If he knows he's trailing the polls, his son's doing all this crazy stuff. We know that every time Hunter Biden gets, bad news or indicted, they indict Trump to cover it up and tell the mainstream media, don't cover Trump.
Bro, we live in like a clown world, absolutely a clown world, but it's just an upside down world. It's crazy. And
but I think what's been happening is people are woken. Yeah, but I think people actually have like awoken, I guess, if you want to use that term. But they've really woken up, and because the playbook has been exposed. And I know, Gentry, you said this on the last episode, but it's, I think, in part due to Twitter and the fact that everyone can say anything at this point. And it's spreading.
I mean, what I like to see also is literally any Black voter or Black person that's interviewed on the street and they're asked about what you think about Joe Biden and Trump, I have not seen any young Black male or female say that they like Joe Biden, and they're all like, yo, Trump 2024. Like that goes a long way. Also, I mean, Hispanics are heavily for Trump from what I've seen. Hispanics are naturally, I mean, both the African-American community and the Hispanic community are naturally still very like Christian, and their values align with conservatism.
And we're also distrustful.
Yes.
We're also distrustful.
Yeah. But there's been this big, like we were talking about last time too, Gentry, this narrative, this subversion of the truth in terms of the party flip, the party switch. And the Republicans, for the longest time, the Democrats have done such a good job at aligning Republicans with racism. You still have many Democrats, like in my family, that say, oh, Republicans are racist. Friends of mine who are Canadians who know nothing really about American politics, oh, Republicans are racist, right? It's like they've done such a good job at aligning these two. This propaganda campaign is like,
and especially with low information voters, which are what most voters are. And
that's exactly what we're saying with democracy.
Yeah, and you know what really struck me? So I just posted this video about somebody reading a children's book that's pretty abhorrent, about whatever, children and being swingers like their parents. Anyway, a lot of people are like, wait, people are reading this stuff in class? And there are tons and tons of books that have been picked up by school districts that are highly sexualized, like, you know, how to give oral sex and how to find the clitoris on girls, and they're being read to like 6-year-old kids. You know, just a bunch of crazy stuff. And a lot of people don't understand that it's actually happening, especially if you're not a parent. Like, how would you know this unless you're actually in it? So I think people, when they see this, they're outraged, and it's like, yeah, well, this is what they're doing. You just don't know it because your mainstream media is not reporting on this stuff.
Yeah, and you're not paying attention.
And you're not paying attention.
It's a similar thing with abortion as well. I saw Jen Psaki. I don't know why the hell I saw her. She's got a new primetime show on CNN or something. I mean,
really, I didn't know that.
It was kind of inevitable, I guess. But
yeah.
So she tweeted something like, "Just so you know, abortion till birth is not a thing." It's like, I get that you want that to be like the truth, but there are doctors that have advocated for abortion postpartum, literally once the baby is born. And there is, so the more reasonable, I guess, or more like centrist Democrats would probably agree with people that are, you know, conservative but not necessarily full stop pro-life, that, you know, we should have a limit on abortion. You know, like you probably shouldn't have an abortion at 8 months, right? Like,
well,
unless there's harm to the woman, or threat to the woman.
Yeah, there's actually a video that somebody made where someone asked a Democratic policymaker something similar, and they're like, no one's advocating for that. And then it goes with clips of them just literally posting Democratic lawmakers saying that exact same thing. And I think Fetterman was one of them. Which by the way, and again, something very weird is happening with that gentleman, because I don't know if you've seen the last few videos of him, but he is completely normal now, apparently. Like, he's just spitting verses. He looks like Eminem at this point. And it's like, how does a guy go from having, you know, completely almost has lost all his brain, then have another breakdown or seizure or whatever he had after he elected, and now he's normal again? I mean, I wouldn't say normal, but the video that I saw, he was just sounded like us speaking to each other.
He was actually coherent. Okay.
And I'm like, what is going on here?
I have not seen one video of him where he was able to come off as somebody who did not have, you know, some kind of mental degradation. I haven't seen one yet.
Speed, or is it like a body double, or it's got to be something weird, right?
I mean, and not to go down the body double road, but I mean, again, if something doesn't make sense, use logic.
Right.
Pretty simple. I mean, we know that they use body doubles all the time, right? Stunt doubles in movies, people who look exactly the same. AI, there's
exactly the same ish, you know, but like, do they have the Mission Impossible technology where they can, you know, just strap on?
For sure they do. For sure they do. Do they have the same earlobe?
I mean, even Putin has a bunch of body doubles. The guy has
is that what to look at? That's what to look at. Is the earlobe?
Yeah.
The shape of the ear. That's what I've seen.
Okay.
This is for educational purposes only.
Of course, no. This is all fiction. There was a point where you know, Biden's face looked like it was a mask, but it might have just been his skin, or
you know, so videos like that. I always want to make sure that because there's a lot of AI stuff going around, right? A lot of AI generated stuff. So whenever I see something, I immediately don't believe it. I'll go research it, and then
skepticism is half, of course.
Yeah. So most of the time I'll find out. Okay. So I'm glad I didn't post. You know, I don't post things without fact checking them. 99% of the time, you know, one might slip by here and there, but for the most part. But I mean, look at the technology that we have today. I mean, we can replace human hearts. We can, this is just, it's amazing what we can do. Something as superficial as plastic surgery to make you look a certain way. I mean, people do complete reconstructive surgery on burn victims and car accident victims where they look normal again. So why is it too far out of the realm just to say, well, I mean, why wouldn't you do this? Right. I mean, we know that leaders in the past have done it for safety reasons or whatever reasons, but so we're saying we can't do it anymore because we have too much technology now. Like, that doesn't make any sense logically.
Yeah, well, it's like saying the CIA, like, what is the CIA doing? You know, like, it's like for the longest time, the CIA was used as, you know, the CIA was used against American people, and it was used to fight against communism, and they used subversive tactics within the U.S. and around the world. It's like, The CIA has only grown since its inception. We don't really know what they're doing, but clearly their intentions, or like the intentions of the people that are running the CIA, probably don't align with like the majority of Americans, and they don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. They probably align more with the WEF and climate change, fighting climate change and whatnot. But so to come back to, so you think that Gentry, a play would be like to call on martial law before the 2020 election? Was that, I don't know which one of you said that.
Oh, I was saying if I'm Biden,
president.
yeah, if I'm Biden, I mean, what decision makes best sense for you to keep power?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be dual.
But they're also, it looks like they're trying to get rid of Biden. Ish. The media is kind of turning on him.
Yeah, I think that the DNC is trying to get rid of Biden, but Biden and Jill, they don't want to get out, and so there's this even power struggle within the left.
Because technically he is president. Technically he has power to do stuff. He is kind of brain dead and a puppet. So I don't know if he can barely read anymore, you know?
Yeah, I think his handlers are worried that he's a loose cannon now.
Interesting.
I mean, it kind of follows the same Hillary power structure that Biden has. I mean, they've been in this, in politics just as long as each other, I think. So, I mean, imagine how many people are beholden to him for whatever reason, whatever he did for them, like whatever he's done, right? And then you have other people that are saying, I mean, look, he can't win, so we got to get rid of him. And I've been saying this
he couldn't win in 2020 though when he won, like
I've been saying this for 6 months. Like they want that new, fresh blood. Yeah. Who was it? It was two presidents. I'm not sure if it was JFK and someone else, but one looked really, really old and one looked really young and like vibrant. And I don't know if that's the thing they're going for with Newsom versus Trump, to have one old guy and one young, fresh, good-looking dude or whatever. Not to say Trump
Newsom would be
not
more
a good-looking man, but
Newsom would be more of an easier sell than Biden, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's an absolute douche, but it's a different story. Just to piggyback a bit on talking about him, Biden being in office forever, something has like struck me, and it's just that you have this dichotomy of makers and takers, and you have the productive factions of society, which essentially is the middle class and the working class, that make up the basis of a whole society. And then you have these people that are politicians and people like George Soros, who has not done anything productive for society ever. Literally all George Soros has done is played around with money, right? He's basically shorted multiple currencies and multiple, he's created havoc in multiple countries. He's not funded anything productive. Everything he's funded has been basically essentially taking, and there is an important function of shorting, currency stocks. There's this balance that you need to have, right? This natural kind of equilibrium that's reached by people that are either buying or people that are shorting the market, right? But so the way he's done it, and I don't want to go too far into this, but he broke the Bank of England. He essentially did that in a way where he used the media and used his influence to just spread this information and then create an avalanche of selling that made them basically have to stop trading of the UK, the pound. And this wasn't done. So there are mechanisms that kind of like shorting currencies and whatnot to kind of regulate it. But when you have a full-on attack, it's like insider trading, right? And he's done that with multiple currencies. But so point being that politicians, what has Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Obama, what have they done productive for society? Have they created anything? Have they created wealth? No, they've just taken wealth from people and redistributed it and taken wealth and spent it and borrowed into the future. So there's this dichotomy that we have, and that seems to be the real kind of war, like the people and even people on the left, that deal mostly with ideas. You have, I'll stop there. But
yeah,
you see that same dichotomy.
Going back to your going back to your George Soros point, absolutely. You have liquidity, and everything runs off liquidity, and you have trading pairs. So the pound versus the dollar, the pound versus the Australian, whatever. And if you have essentially what is a bank run where everyone's selling their liquidity. There's no more liquidity. So you can't trade in and out of a pair. And that's super scary for a trader, because you don't want to be the last person to try to sell off $1 billion and there's not enough money, or you have tons of slippage where you're getting horrible returns where you can lose, 8-10% of the value just in changing your money for another one. So he definitely crashed the British pound. And, I don't know that that's not what he's doing again with the dollar, by just causing all this instability and making countries want to get out the dollar, like we see, with BRICS and other countries that are finally saying we're going to start holding other currency reserves just in case, right? Planting that seed. So if he's shorting the dollar and he's donating all his money to his Open Society Foundation, which is then having our culture destroyed and all this crazy stuff and riots and things like that, funding the BLM riots, which we know his society did, his foundation did, then I mean, who's to say that he's not doing in it for the same reason?
Antifa as well. I don't know if he's involved with the BRICS thing. I feel like it's against his best interest for BRICS to kind of take over the currency.
I don't think it will. Peter Zeihan, who's a geopolitical strategist,
he
talks a lot about it.
Actually,
he's incredible, and he's like, this thing will never work. He goes,
the BRICS thing won't work?
Yeah. Who's going to run it? China? You think Iran and China really trust each other? You think Brazil and China? No one trusts each other. No one has the capacity to do it. Nobody wants to hold Chinese, yuan as their reserve. Nobody wants it.
Oh no, for sure not. And they manipulate their currency so much, and they can. Yeah. It can't be done in the same way here. I think. I don't know. The Federal Reserve, I think, needs to go. That's a whole different ball game, but
Well, I do like what Vivek says about the Federal Reserve. He's like, their job should just be to make sure the currency is stable. That's it.
Well, that's what their mandate is. But it shouldn't even be that. Like Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell go over this a lot. It's like there's a natural flow in the economy where there is recessions. Before 1910, before the Jekyll Island meeting and the establishment of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. went through multiple recessions and peaks and whatnot, but none of them were as bad as after the Federal Reserve was established. Does that make sense? So the Federal Reserve, when you start to do this social and economic engineering, anytime you have a limited number of people that think that they can, create a utopia, it makes everything worse, because it's impossible. It's impossible to predict the behavior of millions of people. That's why the free market is the free market most mirrors nature, and anything that most mirrors nature is going to be the most successful, because the most resilient thing that there is that in our consciousness that we know of is nature, is the planet. So anything that most mirrors nature and the animal kingdom and the way animals relate to one another and their hierarchies and whatnot, that is what is going to be best for a political and economic system. So when you go away from that and you start to have, we don't need to kind of theorize. We don't need to have conjecture. It's been done repeatedly throughout history.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that as a president or as a Congress or as any politician wants to stay in power, just like a good and bad parent, a parent who just enables the kid's going to love that parent. My dad gives me ice cream all the time. My mom says I have to eat vegetables. If you're the politician that goes and you say, you know what, guys, we can't really spend anything. I'm sorry. I know I promised a bunch of stuff, but we can't because we don't have the money. I don't want to print anymore. Let's balance the budget and focus on that. And just no one's going to vote for you. You have to be, we're going to do this infrastructure bill and this and this and this. And who's going to pay for it? Well, the next guy is going to figure it out, because my legacy is my legacy. So that, I think, is a fundamental problem, is like we have enablist politicians or enablist parents as politicians, instead of like the strict father says, no, we can't go to the movies because there's not enough money this month.
That goes back to our discussion with the Senate. That's why the Senate wasn't popularly elected, right? Because when you have popular elections, people are easily swayed. And you have senators that say, we're going to make a Green New Deal and basically give you all money and woo, party. That's not how we want to run our society, right? These short-sighted policies, these policies that are not well thought out and just kind of emotionally driven. You need people that are more that don't have their self-interest at play. And again, this speaks to term limits as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these people, Nancy Pelosi, like you said, is the best trader in history. You know, like clearly there's some finagling going on here. They're not being honest, and they're looking out for their own best interests.
So who do you think would be the next best president then? I mean, this kind of ties into all what you think Vivek would be?
I think
other than Trump, you mean, Gentry, or just total?
I'm just saying the debates were last night, and
let's talk about
I just
that.
wanted to bring the topic up.
Can you give us a little bit of a?
Did you guys watch the debates?
No, I didn't watch them. No.
Let me give you the overview. So Trump went to Michigan to talk to the union over there, which I believe was the same union that Biden went to go picket with, which I thought was really funny because he went to go picket with them and like join the fight, but he could also fix it all, right, if he really wanted to.
Now they want to go all electric and put you all out of business. You know that, right? Yesterday, Joe Biden came to Michigan to pose for photos at the picket line. But it's his policies that send Michigan auto workers to the unemployment line. He only came after I announced that I would be here. You know, he announced quite a bit later. Spoke for a few seconds. Did you notice he spoke for what, a few seconds? And he had absolutely no idea what he was saying. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what we were saying. Where am I? He's saying, where am I? Oh, you're in Michigan. Oh, that's great. What do they do in Michigan? They grow wheat in Michigan, he said. Don't they grow wheat? No, that's Iowa and other places.
So that was a strange move by Biden. Trump went over there, and you know, to be honest, he did clarify a lot of his points on the trans issue. He did a really good job of talking about oil and gas cars, which I thought was really cool.
Biden's cruel and ridiculous electrical. Think of this. He wants electric vehicle mandates that will spell the death of the U.S. auto industry. You know, it doesn't matter. I watch it. You're negotiating a contract. You're all on picket lines and everything, but it doesn't make a damn bit of difference what you get, because in 2 years, you're all going to be out of business. You're not getting anything. What they're doing to the auto industry in Michigan and throughout the country is absolutely horrible and ridiculous. Hundreds of thousands of American jobs, your jobs, will be gone forever because crooked Joe Biden is selling out. But I don't think it's him. I don't think he actually knows what the hell he's doing.
I think it was a shame that he wasn't at this second debate, because I think that it would have been a little bit more civil. I watched about an hour of it, and then I had to turn it off because people were just talking over each other instead of trying to make a really good point of why they should be president. They were trying to make points about how everyone else was bad.
Vivek, if you let Putin have Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
Driving Russia
for Russia is a win for China.
Excuse me, if you have a chance.
I forgot you like China. Where
I voted no on all. I voted on most of those things.
We've waited and nothing has happened.
There was a really interesting exchange between Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy. They were talking about TikTok and how it was just like a really addictive social media platform, and it's basically spyware and all this kind of stuff.
Every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails.
Vivek changed his view on it because he met with Jake Paul, the influencer, and actually got on TikTok, and it's his most viewed social media platform. Here's the thing. I do agree with Vivek that we have to win elections, right? And so what he's doing with all these influencers, because he met with Jake Paul, he did the Full Send podcast. He's done a lot of these like millennial Gen Z podcasts, which I think is fantastic because he's trying to reach the younger generation. And we have to win elections in order to take care of some of this stuff. I mean, with one stroke of the pen, he could do an executive order that says like, any spyware in the U.S. that's from, a foreign country that's considered an enemy, you can just get rid of it.
So the answer is I have a radical idea for the Republican Party. We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next generation of young Americans where they are. So when I get into office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media. We're only going to ever get to declaring independence from China, which I favor, if we actually win. So while the Democrats are running rampant, reaching the next generation 3-1, there's exactly one person in the Republican Party which talks a big game about reaching young people, and that's me. And let me level with all of you. I'm the new guy here, and so I know I have to earn your trust.
I don't think that it would necessarily be a great idea to get rid of TikTok, just because it's like ingrained in American culture right now, right?
But maybe, like you said, make an executive order where the spyware aspect of it has to be removed, so they have to actually change it.
Well, the thing with that is,
but he has to win. Someone has to win in order
he has to play the game.
That.
He has to play the game.
He has to play the game, and
he's also going to be a president for all. Like, one thing that the left has lost is that if you get elected president, you're president for all Americans, not
anymore. You're not, apparently.
Well, in Canada, it's the same thing. They're literally they see the other side as deplorable, as these people that are backwards thinking, and it's like, what kind of arrogance and just pomposity you have to just think that everybody else but you, everybody else that doesn't think like you, is stupid.
Back to the debates, DeSantis did a pretty decent job of not doing anything, which actually worked out really well in his favor. A lot of folks were saying, so I was listening to Ben Shapiro this morning. He was saying that Nikki Haley did a really good job. I don't think she did. I thought she was shrill. I not a fan of her, to be honest.
She's a warmonger. I don't know what the hell she's doing up there. She's no.
Well, there's a guy named Doug Bergman who I've never heard of before, and don't even know why he was there. It seemed like he didn't even know why he was there.
Right.
Like, I've never heard of this guy. Like, apparently he's got the 40,000 donors to get on the stage, but like, why? Like, it just seems like they're wasting space and time.
He's the North Dakota
polling
governor.
So low, by the way. They put the candidates like DeSantis, Vivek, Haley, Christie, Berg, like they put them all in order, and they're like, oh yeah, she's pulling third, but it's like, what does that actually mean? It's like 0.5%, like 2% of like polling. Like, obviously polling isn't necessarily like the most accurate, because I've never been polled. Have you guys been polled?
No, but that's because we don't. No, that's because we have cell phones, and unless they change their methodology, they still do landlines. Yeah. But I don't know if that's changed.
Oh, it's all landlines. I've never been polled on anything.
It used to be like that for a long time. And again, it may have changed, but then you figure who's getting polled? People who have nothing else to do other than answer polls.
I feel like engagement on social media is probably the best gauge for who's doing the best. And in my opinion, Trump won the debates last night, even though he wasn't even there.
Yeah. But that's why he's not going. That's why he's not going.
Right.
It would just be an attack on him,
Yeah.
Like, if it was 3 people, then maybe it makes sense for him to go. Like, if it was DeSantis, Vivek, and Trump, it makes sense to have a debate. This is a clown show. Chris Christie.
Well, I agree from an optic standpoint, to be in the same arena as people who have 0.5%, then it doesn't make sense. Now, if they're, like you said, if there were 3 people, you have a lot more time to talk. But imagine Trump's up there. He's going to get like a fraction of the time, so he's just waiting around, getting attacked, not able to respond to all this stuff. I wouldn't go either.
It was really disappointing. Gavin Newsom had a tweet. He said, "What a shit show," right? And probably one of the only times that I've agreed with Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Like, what does the RNC think? Like, what are they doing? This is ridiculous.
It might be the worst turnout for candidates. I mean, DeSantis isn't running the campaign we thought he would. Vivek has a whole bunch of question marks, and the rest are like Pence. Why is he even there?
Pence is a joke. The whole Republican base hates Pence.
Mhm.
Tim Scott, I like Tim Scott, but he has no chance in hell of being president. Clearly, I mean, Nikki Haley, nobody likes Nikki Haley. I don't know. They live in these bubbles where they think that they're actually popular. Literally, the only two people that have a chance is Vivek and DeSantis. Chris Christie, what are you doing up there, bro? Like, nobody even liked him as governor of New Jersey. He was governor of New Jersey, right?
He called Donald Trump Donald Duck. That was his one line. That was his zinger. Like, who's writing this? Yeah, Chris Christie. He must have hired someone from the Hollywood writer's strike, because that was a terrible line.
Yeah, it's just people are so out of touch. Like, you listen to Mike Pence and it's like, oh my gosh, what is he even talking about? Like, the guy clearly, and it's not just him. It's none of these people live in the real world. They're surrounded by yes men. They live in a bubble. So of course they don't understand what we're going through, right? They know what's happening, or they think they know because their staffers tell them. So the staffers say, hey, you know what, like, kids aren't doing well, or they're doing great, or our polling shows that supporting this is going to be good. So you should go out and say that. So it's like, like, at what point are they barely human, and compared to just someone who just says whatever they think is going to get him elected again, right? Like, I get it. Chris Christie's whole shtick is that he was going to attack Trump, but then to what? Does he think that by just attacking Trump he's going to win the base, like Trump's voters?
No.
Like, so what exactly? So what is he doing? Like, and why is he doing it?
He can't think he's going to win. Like,
no, absolutely not.
Embarrassing.
So that's what I don't understand. What's his point of running, of just attacking Trump?
Yeah, the base is all Trump supporters, right? That's why Vivek is doing such a good job, because he's basically a mini me. It seems like they almost don't want to win at this point, because they're so out of touch.
Yeah.
On the Ukraine thing too, like they're literally saying the opposite of what most. I don't know what world they're living in. They're not aligned with any of the Republican base, right? They're living in the neocon world, and they must have their dinner parties and and so those people think the way they think, but you're not in touch with what real people think. It's honestly, it's actually the kind of idiosyncrasy. I don't know if that's
idiosyncratic.
Word, but the fact, the idiosyncrasy of what's going on is so telling, that of this, like, separation of them being in like a political elite class and living in a bubble and not being in touch with social media, like, because social media ultimately, like you're saying, I think is the best polling. You're right. The things that trend on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram.
How in touch do you like, I mean, and I'm not asking you specifically, but I'm just like, as a general question, like, how in touch does anyone, even a supporter of Biden, believe that he is with reality, with what's happening? I mean, I think about, and when people talk crap on whatever president it is, like Biden, Trump, Obama, I have some sympathy for them, because just imagine the amount of stuff that you have to do on any given day as a president. You don't know where you're going, who you're talking to, what talking points you have. Like, you might be in a meeting about like nuclear waste, and then 10 minutes later you're talking about, like, I don't know, economic relief for Sri Lanka. And you're supposed to know all these things. They don't know what the hell's going on. They get these little notes and stuff like that, and you're going different time zones. So I do give them the benefit of the doubt and saying, yeah, it's a really hard job. And that's why I think Biden is way too old to do anything of that sort, other than just kind of hang out at the beach. But
he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, he's clear. Like, he doesn't have, it would be tough for Vivek, who is like, I think Vivek is, in some sense, a bit of a savant, but he's a very high functioning individual. Even for somebody like that, it would be hard to actually do the job properly. And that's why I understand why Trump, did not necessarily, like, why certain things went certain directions, like increasing the debt so much and not doing certain things that the base would have liked him to do. Because there's a million things you have to deal with.
Well, and not only that, but you have
expert in everything.
But you also have tons of people in your government trying to sabotage your administration.
Exactly.
So you have to deal with that as well.
Washington. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, ultimately the debates were a mess and hopefully they're going to shorten the roster, if you will, and have a couple people on there. So it's not, I mean, it's embarrassing for the Republican Party. So anyways.
Yeah, and for anyone listening this long, we want to thank you. What we're trying to do here at Breakaway USA is to elevate the conversation, but not only elevate it, but also give you the tools to understand what is happening, why it's important, and how to fight what you don't believe in with the necessary tools. So thank you for being here. If you like what you hear, please do us a favor, like, subscribe, and share, because it really helps get the word out. It also helps with the algorithm. So if you like what you hear and you want other people to hear it, then consider doing the same. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Take care, folks.